Hello. Yes, ma'am. Tell me.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay.
Anthony, just a couple of minutes, okay?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
We can start. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to each one of you today. Uh, we just can start with a small word today. We just thank God for bringing all of us here together, and we thank God for Anthony, who's also going to address all of you. Uh, so, for sharing his expertise with us, we ask the Lord to keep our minds and hearts open to take in all the knowledge that we can to help us to pay attention and to learn much from this workshop. So, we'd start with, we just want to introduce our trainer today, Mr. Anthony Heredia. He's currently the MD and CEO at Mahindra Manulife Mutual Funds. He is a CA with over 26 years of experience in the investment management industry. See, he had many senior roles before this position. He was the MD of Morgan Stanley Investment Management, the CEO and full-time director at Baroda Asset Management India Limited, and CEO of BOI AXA Investment Managers Private Fund. He was also the senior VP at HSBC, and he also had a senior position at Aditya Birla Sun Life. He has extensive experience and a strong understanding of sales, marketing, and investment domains. So we are very fortunate to have him with us today here to share his expertise with us, and he's going to teach us a lot of things. He's going to focus on three major areas, which is the importance of financial planning, the key investment concepts, and also importance of allocation of our assets. So the thing is that you all must have read the invitation that went out to you, and it was, does your money work as hard as you? We know how hard all of us work to earn money. So we need to also invest in the right way, and we need to save. So this is what we are going to learn today from Anthony. So we look forward to his session where he's going to show us how important money is to us, to all of us. So welcome, Anthony, and thank
Thank you,
you
sir.
for giving us your precious time today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so pleasure to be here. It's always nice to be able to talk to younger people. You guys are a captive audience. You have no choice but to listen beyond the point. That's not with my children, I don't have that luxury. Uh, I I will just make a couple of observations before I start. I'm audible. Sharon, am I reasonably audible?
Yes,
Perfect. Okay.
yes.
Yeah. So I want to clarify one thing at the start itself. I can see some of you who have still had your cameras on. I see a lot of worried faces, thinking I'm going to kind of bore you to death with large amount of technical concepts, as if I'm like preparing you for an exam in finance that you're giving tomorrow morning. Uh, the surprising thing is that when you want to think about the topic about how you make money or you create wealth, the reality is that the person with the greatest amount of knowledge is actually not the richest. Okay, so what I'm actually going to spend the next, maybe 40 minutes is talk about some concepts, some thoughts, which I hope you guys will remember for the rest of your lives. How you invest and stuff will be a side consequence of your life, but these are the things that I think you need to think about. The other point I will make before I kind of start using a presentation is, the world changes, right? I mean, when you guys were even 10 years younger, there were a lot of different things about how you kind of went about stuff. Uh, and people argue that every single thing in your life you do differently than you used to do 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. The one thing I can tell you hasn't changed for 100 years is how you make money from money. Right? So that's something that you guys need to understand, that those are certain things that you can't change. Right? The value of $100 is $100. It's not going to kind of change. So I'm going to start sharing this and just let me know for sure if it is visible. Cheryl or Sharon. Yeah. I'm hoping my screen is visible.
Yes, yes. We
Okay,
can see it
perfect.
here.
Yeah. And just to clarify, are people able to unmute themselves if they need to, or is it easier for them to use the chat window?
I think both options are there.
The chats, no, we've muted for now.
Chat.
They
Okay.
can use the chat later.
Okay,
we
because
can
I'd like this to be a little interactive because it's always more helpful, right? I mean, because if I give a lecture for 40 minutes, I think at some point in time, people are going to wish they never logged in at 4 o'clock. So I just will ask a couple of questions, and if you
That
feel
time we'll
that
unmute.
you're happy to answer, just put your answer in the chat window, right? So this is the topic. It's a question. I will just ask you a different question. All of you kind of read the papers or read Twitter or Insta, stuff like that, right? I mean, there are lists of the 100 richest men in the world, women in the world that keep coming. Can you think of anybody in that list that you think is a salaried employee? No, right? I mean, so effectively, most people in that list are people who run their own businesses. I mean, that's how they create wealth. Right? I mean, so that's the first point you need to think about conceptually, that uh, these are all people who do what they do, but they didn't become wealthy because of what they did primarily. It's also about what they did with the money that the business they had created. Right? So it's about making sure you have a second income, and every one of us will earn a salary. Some of us will get into business, some of us will become influencers, so on and so forth. Genuinely, the path to becoming wealthy is not necessarily, and I'm saying some people get very wealthy just purely doing their primary profession, but an equally large number of people get wealthy because they just do sensible stuff with the money they earn. Okay. So I don't think this seems to be. Is the slide shifting?
No.
Can you?
No,
Stuck on the first slide.
I'll have to just try to reshare.
Okay. Okay, I'll do it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the, is it moved right to the next slide?
Yes, yes, Anthony. It's working.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So these are the three topics, but I'm just going to start with a basic question. Some of you, if you want, you can add your comments in the chat window. Right? What is an acute infectious disorder, etc., blah, 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 of the renal region of humans, most frequently caused by the rhinovirus? And, unfortunately, I don't seem to be able to
Come
see
on,
the
guys,
chat.
come on.
You guys can unmute yourself also.
Yeah, unmute yourself and answer, because in any case, I can't seem to see the chat window on my screen when I'm sharing for some reason. So if it's okay with Andre and Jessica, if you can just be careful
Yes,
with
yes,
saying
we'll
unmute
read
and
out
mute.
to you. We'll read out to
Yeah.
you.
Just no. I mean, if somebody wants to just unmute and answer, that's also cool.
Yeah, the access has been given to all. You all can unmute and speak.
Somebody said common cold. Jaden
Yeah.
said,
So
Zanita has said common cold.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to, in the interest of time, this is unfortunate.
Sinusitis.
Yes. No, it is common cold. Right? And the reason I use this is because I just want to make a point to all of you. Investing is also not complicated, right? It's actually learning about investments and learning about finance beyond a point, irrespective of what you probably got told in college, it's actually not about IQ. It's really about EQ, which in a longer form is emotional quotient, right? So people who are emotionally doing the right things in terms of thinking about how they invest their money tend to actually be more successful than people who think they have amazing intellect and know everything about a stock that they have bought or a fixed deposit they have done. Right? So that's the first thing. Now, when it comes to financial planning, see, these are standard slides. You have to, each of you have to place yourself and your aspirations in this slide, right? Not everybody is going to get married. Not everybody may want to have children. Not everybody wants to buy a car. I mean, somebody may want to buy a Harley Davidson. It costs as much as a car nowadays. Some people may say, listen, my parents always anchored themselves to a house, but you know what? I don't know whether I'll ever live in a house, right? Rents are a lot cheaper. Somebody may say, listen, I want to kind of do a postgraduate degree in the US. My simple point is every single person on this call will have certain aspirations about how their life wants to kind of take them. And B, those things will keep changing. There is only one common thing, right? That all of these things cost money. And so the whole point is that as you go through your lives, all of you are probably in your late teens, early 20s, I'm guessing. Uh, each of these placeholders will be replaced with something that's really important to you. And whether you like it or not, it is going to take an investment or it's going to take money to get there. Which then means that you need to think about your life in a kind of a context saying, there is going to be a part of my life where I actually earn money. And eventually there is a part of my life where it is my money that gets used for not just myself, but for my dreams and perhaps my family's dreams. And eventually towards the end, it actually is more about, just enjoying and having a happy, retired, chilled out, peaceful, retired life. Right? I mean, that's how everybody's life will kind of transpire. What you guys need to remember is you are all probably in just at the end or start of stage one. And the next 20, 30 years of your life will probably be between stage one and stage two, right? So you will have families in the way you wish them to be. You will have aspirations. Somebody may say, listen, I'm obsessed about buying a house, a big house in Goa, for example. Somebody else may say, no, it's to me, my life for the next 20 years is about making sure I make a trip for 15 days a year to some nice place. I don't know where it is. It may be the Andamans this year, it may be New Zealand the next, but that's what really makes me happy, right? Effectively, you have to understand that in that context, the next 20, 30 years of your life is a period where you are obviously earning money because either you guys have a job or you're starting a business and stuff like that. But it's also a time when you're going to need to start building a corpus to help you enjoy the efforts that you've made, right? So, which is why I kind of talk about this in terms of saying that it is about building wealth, and then eventually it moves to preserving wealth.
Heredia.
Now, in that context,
Uh,
the one thing you guys need to remember is that obviously it's very easy to say that, listen, you need to save some money, you need to invest it. And if you invest it well, or put it differently, if your money is working for you as hard as probably you're working at your job, you should do pretty well, right? Now, I've just put, for example, the 4 or 5 basic things people invest in. Equity, and I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail on it. I can take it during the Q&A time, but the simple point is, what is equity? Equity is effectively you buying a stock, you buying a share in somebody else's business, right? So you go back to my original point, the 100 richest people in the world, they all own their own businesses. The fact is, you can be a businessman. I have been a salaried employee for 26 years, okay? But I can argue to you, I have been a businessman for 26 years as well, because I have owned equity shares of different companies in that time, right? So I have been a businessman also during that time. So don't think that just because you are working in a company, you are therefore chosen not to be a business person. You have a chance to buy and own somebody else's business. And how well that does typically lies in which business you bought and what price you bought it at, right? But that is equity. And if you take it to the next logical step, if I go by this chart that you can see, it's kind of an example of the 15 years of returns between, a fixed deposit that's kind of safe if you invest it in a decent bank or a company, gold. Then somebody will say, why do you want to discuss these 3 other things? Because if equity gives 15%, I should put all my money in equity, right? I mean, it's like really stupid to kind of put 4 things here. But the reality is, as you would expect with anything in life, anything that looks really, really nice in terms of outcome comes with a different level of chance or risk, right? And so therefore, you all need to understand that if you have 100 rupees, you need to have it invested in a way that you balance that risk in relation with, I go back to the previous slide, in relation with what you need to do. I mean, just think about it, right? I mean, let's say somebody says, oh, this is all fine, but now I think I found the magic pill. I will invest all my money in equity. I will buy some of these amazing stocks. They will double. And instead of going to New Zealand for 15 days next year, I went to New Zealand for 15 days. And then I went to Spain for another 10 days, right? And then you discover that the stock market kind of goes through a bad time. And then for the next 5 years, you go nowhere. So the whole point is that you need to manage your investments in a way that for the next 10, 15, 20 years, you do all that you need to do. You don't end up doing things in excesses, and which is why understand that these kind of returns will come up over a long period of time, but they have phases. And you always need to understand when you invest, look at things in perspective, right? Your neighbor or your milkman will come back with a Ponzi scheme that says, Are, you know what? There is this scheme that is there in the neighborhood. If everybody contributes money, 200 rupees per month or 500 per month, after 6 months, everybody will get 500 rupees back, right? You keep hearing about stuff like that. And everybody gets happily contributing and getting money back till one day the whole wheel stops churning, and then you lose your money. And I'm giving you an example. Again, this is, like I said, it's about behaviors. I'm just reading you a letter from Sharon. Any of you could be this Sharon writing a letter to your mom and dad. So I'll just read out this letter, right? I mean, so Sharon's writing a letter saying, Dear mom and dad, sorry for not having written to you for a long time. I will bring you up to date with my life now, but before you read any further, you better sit down. I'm doing quite good now. The skull fracture I got when I jumped out of the hostel when it caught fire has healed reasonably well. I spent almost 2 weeks in the hospital, but I can now see properly and get headaches only occasionally. Fortunately, the fire in the hostel was seen by the watchman and he alerted the fire department and they came pretty immediately. He also came to see me in the hospital. And now, since our hostel is completely burnt, he's offered to share his room with me. It's a bit small, but he's nice, caring. He's a really super guy and we've fallen in love. I'm pregnant, but he says he'll marry me before I deliver my baby, whose test reports are all fine. I'm sure you must be excited to welcome our little agent in the family. Okay, so this is the front of the letter that Sharon's written to her parents. Now we'll turn to the second page. Now that I have told you everything, I want to tell you that the hostel has not caught fire. I don't have a fracture. I'm not seeing anyone. I am not pregnant and I don't have a boyfriend. However, I failed in economics and market. I just wanted to see my result in the proper perspective. Right? So I'm going back to the first slide, which is, if you think about this in isolation, it will kind of think that why is he wasting his time kind of saying that there is something called gold and fixed deposits and there is something called inflation. I mean, basically, he should have just not wasted 40 minutes of my time. We just asked for this workshop just to tell people that they should invest $100, 100% of their money in equity, right? But the whole point is there's always a perspective. Let me give you a second example, right? This is about why behavior, about how you approach investing is far more important than all the gyan you actually think you know about making an investment, right? So this is The Economist, right? This is this is about a 15-year-old story. This is an actual story, okay? This is not just it's just not an example to make a point. So this is the deal The Economist put out, right? They said $59, 1-year subscription online, $125 a year print, and print and web was $125, and it got you both print and online. And in the interest of time, I would love to ask you ask you guys to guess. And do you know what 90% of the people pick? They picked the third one, right? Because they just figured that if I get, if I'm getting both print and online at 125, it's a sweet deal. But you know what? This was an offer that The Economist released or re-released 3 months after their original offer. This was their original offer, right? Online at $59, print at 125. Guess what do you think people did? Everybody picked the 59, right? And all they did is, if you go back to the first one, all they did is, can you see that there's actually no difference between the two, except that they anchored 125 in the middle? Right? So that's the whole point. Sometimes when you make investments, you tend to start getting anchored to what your experiences have been. And it's really, really important to look at things in kind of just isolation and context. So let me move now, because this was just a precursor, right? This was a precursor to tell you that learning about how to invest successfully is something all of you should feel very confident about, because the person who's going to be the most successful investor over the next 25 years is not the person with the highest IQ or the most amount of knowledge about investment. That's the message I want you guys to keep. It is the person who understands what works in terms of common sense, in terms of investments, and what doesn't work, and has the emotional maturity to kind of stick to that, right? Let's talk about some concepts. Now, the first concept you guys need to understand, which is very critical. I mean, you may ask the question, I attended this workshop because I'm part of Take Charge, and, we keep doing these workshops. They, Cheryl and Sharon, they try to come up with stuff that's important for us in their mind, but, I really don't understand why this is important. Now, inflation is a word that you read sometimes, I'm guessing, in the paper, right? I mean, what the wholesale price inflation is 7%, the consumer price inflation is 4% or 5% or 8%. It doesn't, and you kind of think that, okay, that's interesting. Some of you, I'm sure, are students of commerce and economics, so you kind of understand it a little better. But I'll just give you an example of what this actually means, right? From your life perspective, the next 30 years of your life, what does this concept of 6% inflation mean, right? Effectively, inflation basically makes you poorer tomorrow than you are today. Just very simply. I mean, it's a very strange definition of inflation. I'm sure if you look at your textbooks, there would be very high technical definitions of inflation, but this is the common sense definition of inflation. It makes you poorer tomorrow than you are today with the same amount of money. As simple as that. Right? And so this is a table which takes inflation at 6%. So please understand, I am not taking numbers to kind of make a point, right? And somebody will say, yeah, but he put a number there, this doesn't happen, right? Inflation has been more than 6% in India for the last 50 years. And it will be kind of 5-6% for the next 25-30 years, right? So I haven't taken a number. But do you understand what it actually means to all of you? And I change these kind of examples because it depends on the audience, right? I just curiously, for example, took the Twitter blue tick that we all now have to pay money for, $9,400 a year for iOS and Android, right? A lot of you at some point are going to think about your MBA, right? For example, this is the kind of cost that the normal business school charges an MBA. Now, let's, for argument's sake, say that today you're looking to your parents to figure this out. 20 years, 30 years from now, you're going to be the person figuring this out for your kids in some sense, right? This is what this is going to mean. You're going to pay $50,000 for that blue tick. You're going to pay 70 lakhs for that MBA. Right? So do you really think, now I'm reversing the question, right? In 10 minutes ago, I said, why would you not invest only in equity? Now the argument will be, I don't care about equity and the wealth creation. I don't want to take chances. I will only invest in a fixed deposit, right? So just imagine if you invested in a fixed deposit, 20 years from now, all of that money is not even going to be able to get you the stuff that you could have bought 20 years ago. This is another example that gray-haired people like Sheryl and I will remember. Most of you on this call won't even know this, right? I mean, these are coins that Sheryl and I grew up with. They don't even exist. I'm betting 20 years from now, your 10 rupee note, 20 rupee note, 50 rupee note will be history for you. You will not see it, right? So just imagine, that is what inflation does. Inflation is not a technical term. It's a big deal, right? So if you aren't thinking about investing in a way to beat inflation, all this other stuff I spoke to you about, holiday in New Zealand and Harley Davidson and stuff like that has no relevance. Which is why making sure when you invest in instruments that logically for you, given your dreams, aspirations, have at least a chance to give you that return is really, really critical. That is why I'm driving the concept of inflation in your head. Because the next time you want to invest in equity, for example, and your neighbor or your best friend tells you, oh, no, don't do that. I heard Savio invested in this stock and he lost 50% of his money in the last 1 month. Then you tell him, boss, these things happen. And this is not about which stock you bought. This is about taking a step back and doing what is broadly the right thing, right? And which is why I'm making the point. Remember this visual image. Even if you don't remember the numbers, remember this visual image. This is what Sharon and I saw as kids. You guys are not going to see the 50-buck note. I would actually argue 20 years from now, nobody's going to use the 100 rupee note either. The second point is the power of compounding. Now, this is a usually technical term. Let me just very basically tell you. If you have invested money and if you don't talk to too many people and you stay with what you are supposed to do, right, your money starts earning more money. Okay, so when you, for example, even if you invest in a deposit which pays 7% and you invest in a deposit that pays 7%, think about it this way. You invested $100. The $100 is worth 107 after 1 year. If you don't need the money, which more often than not you may not, leave the money, then you make the next 7% on 107, right? You don't make it on 100. That is the power of compounding. It's something people don't understand the genuine power of, right? And which is why most people will invest, then they'll take the money out because somebody said something, then they'll invest again. The price you pay by staying, coming in and out, instead of staying invested and enjoying the benefit of compounding is stunning, right? I mean, just take, I'm not going to go into each column, but just look at the difference between, let's say, somebody, something like 1 lakh rupees, or maybe I'll just switch to the next slide and that gives you a better example, right? I mean, because this basically, for example, just tells you 10% return over 20 years, just see what 1 lakh can become. Another important point I should have made, I'll make it now. Very often in investing, people, when they buy equity or when they buy stuff, all of you think in terms of multiples. I've seen this happen all the time. Even I do it, right? Has the stock I bought doubled? So everything is doubled, tripled, halved, right? And that's stupid because actually something that grows at 12% compounded over 6 years also doubles. But you tell somebody that I'll tell you this stock, I think it will double in 5 years. You'll say, yes, yes, tell me. And I tell somebody that, you know, this stock will earn 12% compounded return. I think this fund will. You'll say, oh, that's so boring. Tell me something that doubles. And I'm like, but that actually is doubling, right? So you need to understand, move away from doubling, tripling, halving to just purely saying, if I can make 10, 11% compounded returns over 10, 15, 20 years, all of you on the call, trust me, will be reasonably wealthy. And it is actually people who focus on their energies on trying to double and triple that never get there. And it is the person who focused on getting 10% a year every year and staying invested that actually got there. So, you know, an SIP is a very common part of what we do in our industry. It's something I would recommend every single person to do, right? Why? Because A, it's basically forcing you to save money and invest. B, look at the number. It is not relevant whether SIP doesn't start. This example is 10,000 bucks because I just want to kind of blow your mind by saying it becomes 1.33 crores after 25 years, which it does. But, you know, why can't any of you who've just about started working, or even, you know, can you not put aside 500 bucks a month, 1,000 bucks a month? And just imagine what it becomes over 10 or 15 years, right? So that is the power of compounding. So again, I'm making the point, don't think about investing as doubling your money. It's just about, as long as I can do 10, 12% a year, and I do it for 15, 20 years, you'll be amazed at what the consequences are. I'll play a game with you guys. I need the chat button to be fairly active for this. Right? Or you can unmute. So I'm just saying, you start with 1 rupee. Every day, double that money, right? And Cheryl will give you what is left after doubling at the end of the month. Can anybody take a guess what that number will be? Just 1 rupee. So 1 rupee will become 2 rupees and so on and so forth, right? Every day we'll double it. After 30 days, what do you think it's going to be? Anybody can either unmute and give me an answer, or they can put it in the chat button.
Come on.
Come on, there are no
Which is your
there I have one guess at least from Fleur. A, 10 lakhs. Okay, Fleur, you're going with 10. No problem. Anybody else wants to go with any other number?
Darren's
Yeah,
30.
30 crores or more. Darren, this is like a really safe one, right? I'm guessing you are one of those people who play fantasy football or you know. So make sure you bet on the highest one. So, you know, but anyways, yeah,
Anita
so
said
Keith's also
20.
30 crores. Yeah, but Keith saying 30. Okay, let me just again, in the interest of time. Yeah, so this is the, unfortunately, when I go 53.69 crores. Okay, that's what comes when you just double $1 every day for 30 days. Right? And basically, it's the power of compounding. If you can make what you made with your first rupee also work as hard, that's how you kind of make this money. Now, let me move to the last, semi-last part, right, of the common sense parts of investing, which is that, okay, so Anthony, you gave me all this nice gyan about different type of investing, why you will invest. You kind of were nice enough not to impose your thoughts on us, saying that it's about marriage and children's education and stuff. You just said, my dreams, I should fund through investing. I should be clear that I should have a broader perspective, not get obsessed about stuff. I don't get anchored by what happens yesterday. I also understand the inflation stuff, but I'm only 22. I need to have a life. So can I just not wait and do this when I'm 30? And I just want to introduce you to a small section which says, dear Mr. A or Miss B, you can wait till you're 30, but just understand cost of, okay? Somebody wants to make 1 crore rupees by the time they're 60. All you need, if you're kind of just making 10, 11, 12%, is 1,500 bucks to be invested every month if you're 25. Okay, by the time you're 30, it needs to be double that almost. So that's the call you need to make, right? I mean, do you really want to delay? Because effectively every 5 years you delay makes you need to go double to reach the same goal. I've just thrown an example, Jessica and me, right? So, and just to clarify, Jessica is not 25 and I'm not 45.
Anthony, you're stuck. Anthony, you're stuck.
Cheryl, I'll check with him.
Yeah. So guys, how are you enjoying it? Is there anything that you're learning from this? Alano?
Yeah, the session seems very fun. I'm enjoying it at the moment.
Okay. Anybody else wants to share what's happening?
Cheryl, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so let me
Yeah.
just. Yeah, okay. So, like I said, Jessica starts with 5,000 at the age of 25. By the time she is 55, which is a long time away for Jessica, but she's kind of, that same 5,000 bucks a month is going to be actually 1.75 crores. Okay. And because I decided to enjoy my life till I was 45 and spend all the money I had and I start investing, I actually invest 3 times the amount Jessica does. Right. And let's say our ages coincide, right? So every month that Jessica is investing 5,000, I am investing 15,000. But all I will get is 35 lakhs. So just think of the power of all of you in this room, this chat room. You guys are all below 25, right? I mean, so you can all be Jessica and you don't need to be Anthony. If I wanted to be Jessica, this is what will happen, right? Either I, who started 45, I need to find a way to make 36% return on my investment, right? Which basically means I need to call the neighborhood Ponzi scheme who's kind of saying, give me 500 bucks, I will double it after 3 months, right? Or I need to save 75,000 bucks. It's a lot of money. Just imagine Jessica's happily chilling, doing 5,000 bucks a month. We both grew up together. We were both 25 at the same time. It's just that I thought that it's not important. She figured it was. So the message I want to give all of you guys is that please understand that what you have in terms of the incredible power of creating wealth is age. It's not intellect. Like I said, I keep coming back. It's not about IQ. It's just the fact that there are certain basic facts about money that make money. And you guys have it going for you because effectively, as long as you guys can put away 500 or $1,000, I can see Alano on the screen, my mentee. And I know, for example, he started investing. I hope he sticks with it, right? I just want to also give you a perspective that many people think successful investing is about, again, finding the right company stock to buy, finding the right deposit to do. But there is like a lot of studies. I'm just going to highlight, so you can do equity, you can do debt, you can do these liquid funds, you can buy real estate, but that's tough because it requires a lot of money to buy, one flat or one piece of land. Or you can buy commodities. There are commodity futures that you can buy and so on and so forth. Somebody I know in the chat window asked a question about silver, etc. Yes, you can. You can buy gold, you can buy silver, you can buy an oil ETF, you can buy a lithium ETF because lithium is more important, right? Because the world is going to be buying electric vehicles. Lithium is a big core component. But surprise, surprise, lithium prices have dropped 40% in the last 6 months, right? I mean, so it's not a one-way street. They've grown 100% in the last 3 years, but they've dropped 40% in the last 6 months, which is why the whole point is asset allocation, right? So you need to figure out what is it you want to do with your life, what are your goals, what are your dreams, what are they going to cost, and therefore what's the right allocation you should make between equity, gold, real estate, debt to reach those aspirations. Because this study basically says that somebody who gets his or her asset allocation call right basically gets it right. It's not the person who figured out the best stock to buy. It's not the person who figured out best commodity to buy. It's the person who stuck to their asset allocation. Right? So that's something that you really need to understand. And I'm just going to throw you this. This is a very crowded slide, but just think about it this way, right? You really think people are that intelligent to figure out what's going to do best amongst all this next year? Because this is an example of what happened in the last kind of 10 years, right? And this is an example of a lot of different subsects. I mean, so there is an S&P 500. You look at the right extreme top left, right? The S&P 500 is US equity. It's the BAP of all stock markets. The Nifty small cap is basically India small companies, because India is growing. Small companies will do exceptionally well. The Nifty is Indian equity. The treasury bill is debt. The GSEC is as high quality deposit rates that you can get. Gold is gold, right? And you go year by year and you see the kind of returns that change. Do you honestly want to be the person trying to forecast 2024? And the whole point is that if I tell you that 90% is actually about just getting your asset allocation right, why would you want to waste your time doing it? Right? So you just buy a decent equity fund or a decent passive equity Nifty fund. You just put some money in a deposit. You put some money in gold if you think that kind of benefits you. You stick to it with high degree of discipline. You will become wealthy. There's no point wasting time on stuff like this, right? And even if I haven't convinced you, this slide has to convince you, right? Because this is for all the people here who think in for 26 years, right? I mean, so this is my day job. This is what I do for a living. I think I know which companies to buy and stuff. But this is how the market has changed in the last,
Anthony, you're stuck.
to 40 years later, the biggest companies in the market in the Sensex are all banks, right? Look at how the manufacturing companies have become so much smaller. There are some companies, by the way, that don't even exist today. Okay, these were companies that have employed thousands of people, right? You look at all the tech companies today that exist, right? Infosys, TCS, etc. They didn't even exist 20, 30, 40 years ago, most of them. So the point I'm just basically making to you is that this is going to always keep happening. This is going to change. You shouldn't, unless you're making it your professional vocation, which is you want to be a person who becomes eventually a research analyst or a fund manager. If you're not that and you're an investor, don't waste your time with this. Just understand one thing. You want to create wealth because you need to fulfill your dreams over time. Figure out the broad allocation that needs you to get there and have the emotional maturity to stick with it no matter what. That's what's going to take you there. Now, somebody says, okay, but how do I figure this out? Because this is all complicated. Who's going to sit and total what the cost of New Zealand holiday will be? Harley Davidson, somebody told me cost 4 lakhs. I went to the store, he said 7 lakhs. You know, stuff like that. Okay, forget all that. I'll just give you one simple formula. Imagine your age to be 100, minus your actual age from it. The remainder is what you should be buying equity. The rest, just buy fixed deposits or gold or whatever, it doesn't matter. Because the pure part that you have to get right actually when it comes to creating wealth is how much equity you need to do, right? So effectively, for example, let's say I'm exactly 49 years old, right? So broadly, as long as I have 51% of my entire portfolio in equity, that should be okay, right? Because I don't need to be 90% in equity right now, because hopefully I'm reasonably wealthy at this point, given what I have, hopefully I heard and listened to myself 20 years ago, right? And I need to start focusing on, if I live till I'm 70, I want to go and see Wimbledon when, I need to. I want to go and watch the Football World Cup. I need to enjoy a good fish curry rice on a Sunday afternoon. That's how I spend my retired life. I don't want to, go into the grave being one of the richest people that nobody knew how rich I was, right? So at some point in time, I'll start orienting towards fixed income, because having a happy retired life is more important to me. For all of you on the call, clearly a lot of your aspirations and dreams are still to be reached, right? You still have to buy the Harley. You still have to go on the holiday. You still need to go to the salon every weekend. And so for that, you clearly need to have equity as a very large component. And when I talk about equity, I'm saying don't waste your time about, oh, how am I going to learn about which stock to buy, which stock not to buy? It's all irrelevant. Just buy any normal, decent equity mutual fund or buy an index fund and you're done. And when you ask me, how much should I do? Simple, just take your actual age minus your actual age from 100. The remainder needs to be done. Even if you want to not complicate it that much, if you can spare $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month, what money sits in your bank account month after month shouldn't be sitting there. It should be invested in equity. It's as simple as that, right? The other part that people get wrong, oh, no, but the market is high. It's 60,000. It will fall. I will wait because my best friend told me that the market will fall in the next 6 months, so I will invest. Right? This is just a basic example, just throwing you actual data. You know what works in equity? Time, not timing. Right? So this just gives you an example. There's a person who invested at the lowest level of the market every month for the last 10 years versus somebody who just blindly just invested on the 7th of every month and I don't care. Every 7th I will invest. Just look at the difference in returns. Do you think it really matters? The person who was right every single month for 10 years, just even 120 times, this person picked the exact low point of the stock market. Nobody will ever be able to do that. And just imagine the price you get for that, 0.3% additional return. So why would you want to waste your time? I mean, you can just use that time to do other things, right? So please remember that really what's going to make you money in equity is effectively the time you give it, not the timing or not trying to figure out what to buy. So I'm going to end with this. This is again conceptually, right? Are there any experts? Are any of you ever going to be able to be experts? Am I an expert? Let me give you a story, then you will understand what I'm saying, and I'll throw it open for questions. So for almost 2 centuries, and this is reasonably I mean, this is part fiction, part fact, because nobody really knows beyond a point. But the fact that Spain does have this Christmas lottery is a fact, right? So it's hosted an enormously popular Christmas lottery. Based on the payout, it is actually the biggest lottery in the world. It actually is, and nearly almost all Spanish people play. Right in the mid 1970s, a man sought a ticket that ended in 48. He found the ticket, he bought it, and he won the lottery. Right. And when he was asked why he was so intent on finding a lottery ticket that ended in 48, this is what he said, right? And this is what I want you to leave this presentation remembering. He said, I dreamt of the number 7 for 7 nights. And that's why I picked 48. Okay. So this is what you get when you spend so much of time trying to figure out, understanding all of these investment stuff. It's not relevant. Right? Sometimes hindsight is a perfect science. So I'm going to summarize by basically, before I take any questions, I'm summarizing the same things, right? I'm sure some of you are kind of looking at me at the end of this and saying, this is probably not what I expected this workshop to be. That I thought I was going to get a huge amount of gyan about how you will select which equity stock to buy and, stuff like that. But I'm just saying, honestly, after having spent so many years in this business, I've realized it is not about that. It is just basically about some simple stuff. Inflation is going to kill you. There's lots of dreams and aspirations you're going to have. More often than not, equity is going to take it there. And being disciplined, being long-term, being able to keep investing when you're young and sticking with it will make you guys very, very happy in times to come. Trust me, that's how all people have got wealthy. When they turn back and they think about what really worked for them, it more often than not is the amounts they invested consistently, patiently, sensibly. That's the stuff that made them money. So this is not about intellect. This is not about IQ. This is just about saying, invest regularly, invest in the right stuff, keep your dreams at the back of your mind. Don't listen to your friends and neighbors beyond a point. Just keep sticking to this. Do this consistently for 10, 15 years. Trust me, you guys will remember me. I'm super convinced about that. If we ever met 15, 20 years from now, if any of you guys did this, trust me, it is those investments you will remember me, because I am telling you this is true to myself. Right? The investment I started when I was 23 or 24, honestly, did I know as much about investing and markets as I do today? The answer is probably 100. But that investment, I will never be able to surpass. Because I did that when I was young. I left it for a long period of time and it worked its own magic. That's what you guys need to do. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm going to check if there's a question in the chat window.
Anthony, please stop the sharing. And then
Yes,
we can see everybody and ask them to unmute.
Yes.
Or, come on screen.
Yeah, there are some on the screen, so I can maybe start with some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so Anit is asking where to invest. So Anit, very simply, let's assume, so you have to invest mostly in equity. Just pick I would say just pick an index fund and invest in an index fund, start an SIP in an index fund, or start an SIP in one of these equity funds. There are N number. There are lots of, you youngsters like apps and platforms. I know Alano uses them as well. So, there are some apps and platforms, Zerodha, Paytm, Grow. Just use any of them and put $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is that you think you can spare in one of these equity funds. In terms of a deposit, pick anyone. It doesn't matter. Any bank kind of turns out to be good. Nathaniel has asked a brilliant question saying it's unpredictable. Yes, Nathaniel, because otherwise, why will it give you so much money? If everything was so predictable, predictable is go to State Bank of India. It will give you 6% for a 5-year deposit. That is extremely predictable, right? And then therefore, what is also predictable is the 100 rupees you put in State Bank of India, which otherwise could have bought the burger. After 5 years, when you get that money from State Bank of India at 6% interest, will not buy a burger. That is also predictable. So you have to understand that if you want to make more money than inflation, which then genuinely means you're creating wealth, that that risk is going to come part of it. That unpredictability is there. I mean, that's why you make money, you know. That's why the businessman makes more money than the salaried employee, right? So I, for example, work with the Mahindra Group, right? I mean, Mr. Anand Mahindra is the chairperson, right? He's obviously extremely wealthy because he takes the risk, right? He takes the risk of setting up a fund company. Takes the risk of setting up an automobile company. It's a risk, right? I mean, when we launch an SUV, we don't know if it's a bestseller or it's going to be a dud. We don't. He's the guy who takes the risk. So effectively, when it's a bestseller, he's the guy who makes the money. It's as simple as that. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is not a casino, okay? It's just basically saying that equity markets will keep going up and down in the short term. And in fact, today morning on Twitter, I saw somebody from Stern University released a report on the Indian market study over the last, I think, 30 years. And they basically said that on a 1-year basis, rolling, right? So boss, there are n number of 1-year periods you can pick in the last 30, 40 years. You would have made a positive return in equity 43% of the time. So 51% or 57% of the time, you wouldn't have made it. If you change that to every 5-year period in the last 30 or 40 years, you would have made a positive return 93% of the time. And if you change that 5 years to 10 years, you would have made a positive return 100% of the time. And just imagine of the kind of crazy stuff that's gone in markets in the last 40 years, right? So the point is, it is unpredictable. The only way you solve for the unpredictable is time. It is not knowledge. Okay, that's really, really important.
Alan is asking how to plan and budget your monthly income.
Alan, it's about. So you were saying you want to make an emergency fund. Alan, why are you worried about making an emergency fund right now? That I would say you leave for your parents to think about. You at your age, I would say, should have an emergency fund of maybe not more than 2 or 3 months of monthly expenses. And once you kind of have that, then anything else you can spare, $500 as well, is something you should start investing. See, understand one really important thing. One of the lessons I would want all of you to take from this workshop is you start investing. Doesn't matter. This is not a workshop to solve your investing issues for the next 35 years. You will learn, you will invest, you will make mistakes, you will get up and you learn more. But what you should do is, the best learning comes from actually doing it. Right? There's no point having listened to all this gyan from me. After 6 months, somebody else will give you also gyan. But if you actually, and you guys have a mentee group, so check with Alano. I mean, Alano should confess that his investments that he has made haven't worked in the last 5-6 months. But should he care? The answer is absolutely no. Because he has learned enough with that investment in the last 6 months to keep at it, right? And eventually, it is actually those mistakes that will make him richer than the successes. Just imagine he'd invested in something.
We can't hear you, Anthony.
Don't months of expenses, and then try to find $500 or $1,000 to start investing if you can.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Anit Nadar.
Hi, Anit.
I wanted to ask you, like I was reading a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's all about risk and reward. Stock market is all about risk and reward. So, how to overcome the risk and the fear of risk?
So that's why I made the point earlier, right? The most important thing about making money is therefore EQ, emotional quotient. It's not intellectual quotient, because there will be so many studies you will read and learn that tell you one very basic thing, that the risk of a negative or a poor return from equity is directly related to the lack of time you give the investment. Right? Okay, there is obviously the case that you buy a rubbish stock. That's a separate point. And that's why I'm making the point to all of you. Please don't pretend or attempt to be fund managers. Just buy an equity fund, buy an index fund. Don't waste your time trying to figure out which stock to buy. As long as you are able to be clear in your mind that you will give your investment at least 5 years, Anit, trust me, it will be positive outcome at the end of it. That's what history has shown for 5, 10 years, 20 years. It's frankly in the US, the last 100 years. So equity stocks are meant to be unpredictable. They are risky, but the only way you take care of that risk is time. You don't take care of that risk by finding some nuggets about that company that nobody else knows. That just doesn't happen anymore. So that is why you will make money. It's because you are emotionally smarter than the next person, not because you are intellectually smarter. That's the real important message you guys need to remember. I'm sorry, did I answer the question, Amit?
She says thank you.
Yeah, okay. Fleur has a question: is SIP counted as equity? Very much. See, Fleur, SIP is a mode. What is SIP? It stands for systematic investment plan. So you can invest systematically into a debt fund. You can, which is like a fixed deposit kind of alternative. You can invest systematically into a liquid fund, which is like an emergency fund alternative, or you can invest systematically into an equity fund, right? My suggestion would be, do not waste your time doing an SIP into a liquid fund or a debt fund. If you're doing SIPs, do it in an equity fund, because that's what I mean. You will invest small sums of money regularly in something that will grow over time, right? And you're absolutely right. You made the perfect point, right? I mean, maybe today you do 1,000 or 2,000. Maybe 7, 8 years from now, you're able to do 10,000, right? You can still use the same SIP. You can open an SIP in another fund. Absolutely cool. Ultimately, you're buying equity. It doesn't matter. But yes, I think I would address one important point. Us fund companies, because we have to create more business, we launch many funds. And when we launch a fund, we say this fund is nicer than most of the other funds because it's new, it's shiny, right? The reality is all of them are the same, right? Think about the varieties of soap, right? How many varieties of pear soap do you see now? How many varieties of Liril soap do you see? Liril with lime, Liril with mint, Liril with lemon. I haven't even figured out the difference between lime and lemon. But there are customers who think it's better, right? So similarly, mutual funds also launch many funds saying this is better. Just buy a diversified equity fund or an index fund. You're perfectly okay. Shayan saying he's investing in a mutual fund safe. Shayan, my counter question is, what else would you do? You would invest in equity directly? Would you have the ability to kind of understand the company, decide whether IndusInd Bank is a good thing to buy at 1,040 or not? No. Now, mutual funds in the past, I will tell you, and this is stories you'll hear from the generation ahead of you, they were kind of bad, they lost money and stuff, which did happen in the late 80s and the late 90s, but we're talking about 30 years ago, right? Today, a mutual fund is the simplest way you kind of put money in. I'm just clarifying, don't go and buy 20 different types of mutual funds, just buy 3 or 4 decent funds. And frankly, beyond the point, it doesn't matter which funds you buy also. Buy an index fund then, right? Don't waste time thinking about, should I buy ICICI or Mahindra or Birla or Tata? Just buy an index fund, be done with it, you're sorted. Because your big advantage is your age. Trust me. If to your age you add one more advantage, which is you add emotional quotient, you're done. You're sorted. What amount would I recommend, Shayan? It depends. I would say an amount that allows you to keep enjoying your life. So please understand, I'm not sitting here saying, no, the next time you go to the restaurant, just think you should have bought an SIP with it. That is absolute rubbish. I mean, the reason you invest to make money is to enjoy it, right? So there is little point in kind of saying that Anthony had this workshop to tell us that we should stop going out on the weekend and we should take every single rupee to invest. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, but after you do all of that, the couple of $1,000 that you should save or can save, you must make sure you're investing it. To people who are not saving it because it's in the bank, you spend it, then I would say you need to have a rethink, right? You need to make sure that if you're making 10,000 or 20,000, you need to find a way to save $1,000 to $2,000 off that, because eventually that's going to be so useful to you when you're 30 and you want to party. You can't imagine, right? So Alan has a question. How much of monthly income should be allocated in terms of needs, desires? Alan, every person is different and unique. My needs and my desires are very different from yours. your needs and your desires are extremely different from your fellow mentee, right? There could be somebody who really loves the nature, right? I mean, so you want to have the ability to go on treks, you want to go to Siachen, you want to do stuff. That's what is your desire. Somebody else's desire, and I know in our buddy group, we have that guy. I don't know if he's on the call today. I know he loves bikes, right? I mean, so I know he saved a hell of a lot of money and he bought a Harley. I mean, that's his desire. So whatever is your desire, the point is identify that, you know that it costs money. Unfortunately, every desire does, unless, you know, you're extremely, you know, you've reached nirvana where your desires are something that you can only express in your mind, which few of us can. Once you have identified that, then you figure out that this is what it takes. I'm guessing, and this is basically a cheat sheet. At your age right now, there's no point beyond the point starting to do this calculation saying, you know, how much will a holiday in New Zealand cost and so on and so forth. Simple. Whatever you're making today, how much can you keep aside without compromising your quality of life beyond the point, and just invest it in equity. Full stop. Just do it. You'll be sorted. Okay, Alano, if you have to start investing, how much percentage of your salary? Alano, in the interest of time, we will discuss it at our next meeting happening next week.
So I asked because for everyone to know.
Yeah.
I know the answer myself.
Yeah, no, I know that. That I must call you out on that. And by the way, just to clarify, guys, Alano doesn't invest regularly in an SIP and stuff because his mentee happens to be me. Mentor happens to be me. He did that irrespective, right? The only thing I'm trying to convince him is to kind of start a broking account in Kotak, right? But outside of that, the percentage of your salary is, like I said, the amount that you know you're really not going to need. That percentage is what should work for you. And it's going to be different for different people, right? For some of you who are, you know, theoretically, you could say, I probably don't need 50% of my salary. Then invest all of that 50%. For somebody else, and I know somebody, I think it was Alan or somebody else asked the question about emergency fund, right? I mean, so your circumstance may be different. So you may just want to keep an emergency fund. So maybe for you, it's only 10 or 15% for now. And like Fleur asked the question, can I change it over time? Sure, you can, right? Just because somebody decided that, okay, I can do 10,000 bucks a month SIP, and later on something changes. 2 years from now, you may need some money. You need to drop that to 5,000. Nothing stops you from doing that. Yeah. So Alan is saying, I have started investing a good amount in equity. But your parents aren't convinced. Alan, all I can say is that I've had the opposite. My dad invested in equities in the 70s and 80s. Maybe that's what convinced me to build a career in markets. But equities, there are horror stories, but by and large, like I said, you buy a decent index fund, you can't lose money over 5 or 10 years. It's just not possible, right? But if you buy based on a tip that your neighbor told you that I heard this company is going to double in 2 months or 3 months, then yeah, then that's obviously risky and you're being greedy. So I'm not recommending that, right? I'm just saying, all of you, please don't buy any companies directly, just buy funds, because there is only so much knowledge you will have about buying companies. So yeah, please don't stop investing, keep investing. Which is the best MF house to invest with? Question by a participant. This has come from Take Charge. Yeah, okay. No. So listen, there are virtually all mutual funds are decent because it's very simple. I live in a competitive market, right? If I don't deliver, then the customer is going to give money to somebody else. Because how does a customer? Alano goes to grow. He downloads on the app. Show me the funds which have given the best returns over the last 3 years. Now, I will tell Alano when I meet him next, Alano, there is enough evidence to suggest that the past performance is not an indicator of the future, which is a fact. But it's also reasonably clear that it's also not an indicator that these are going to be the worst performing in the next 3 years. So what difference does it make? And like I said, I mean, otherwise just buy an index fund. Why worry then which fund house or whatever? Everybody offers a nifty index fund, buy that. But otherwise, there is Mire, there is HDFC, there is ICICI. I'm not going to say Mahindra because that is a conflict of interest. So avoid that. But I would just say that there are enough number of mutual funds. It doesn't matter which one you pick. What matters is you actually invest. Can you explain ETFs a little more? How is it different from equity or index funds? Shall I very simply put? So an index fund basically just replicates the index, right? So the BSE 30, the Sensex has 30 companies. Each company has a particular percentage proportion in the market index. That is an index fund, right? So for example, Infosys is 7% of the index, Reliance is 9% of the index, Bajaj Finance is 2% of the index. So every day, depending on how those companies do in terms of their price for the day, the index goes up or down, right? Now, an ETF basically allows you to buy that index during the day on the market versus an index fund. See, what happens with an index fund? You will go to the fund house or you will go online and you will buy that index fund. Whatever is the price at the end of the day is what your investment will be made at. Okay. But in case of an ETF, you can actually go on the exchange and the same index you will buy at 2 o'clock. So effectively, whatever is the index at 2 o'clock is what you'll buy. An index fund means you're buying the index at 3:30 every day. You can't buy the index at 2 o'clock because there's only one price for an index fund and ETF keeps changing. I will also add this. Does it
Anthony, you're stuck. Hello.
Cheryl,
Yeah.
sorry, I think I dropped. Am I back now?
No, yeah, back.
Okay. Yes. So my first 2-3 investments were actually very successful. When I think about how I made them, the logic and all that, I can kind of tell you the horror story. I mean, I just looked at the paper and I somehow thought that BR Alloys is a great company. I did some analysis paralysis. I invested in it. It actually doubled or tripled in 6 months. By the way, after about 2 years, the company shut down. But fortunately, by that time, I had sold. So I would say that, it's like I said, it's about understanding that things also go down and being mature enough to accept that. That to me was the main learning you need to have. In equity, if you think that, somebody needs to convince, I will buy equity only if it only goes up, then I would tell you, trust me, it's never going to be that. Overall, you will make money from equity over a 5 or a 10-year period. You can argue that it will always be higher than what you did. Okay, but in terms of my own personal experience, I don't distinctly remember. I can only say this. Some of this stuff I told you, I didn't adopt as much. I wish I did. I would be a lot richer today if I adopted some of the advice I'm giving you today. Let me make that as an honest confession. I probably started my first SIP when I was like in my early 30s. So I wish I would have started in the 20s. I think I would be much happier, but it doesn't matter because at least I started when I did. Cheryl, unfortunately, because I had logged out and in, I've lost all the other messages in the chat.
Okay.
So
can I read some of them? Should we plan a strategic exit on our investments?
Should we plan a strategic
exit on our investments?
Yes, you should. But again, I would say you start thinking about exiting investments only if 3-5 years have passed. Number one. Number two, the word strategic exit means to me, then you start having a mind of you're going to be second guessing the market. Intellect is playing a role, right? Because then a strategic word itself is intellectual. So my point is that as long as if you bought an index fund, then what is strategic exit needed for? It's only tactical exit because you need to get that money to go to New Zealand. No. Ultimately, you have to pay the travel agent. So you will have to make a tactical exit. You'll have to redeem from the fund and pay the travel agent. So that is what you'll do. But if you're buying an index fund, if you're buying a diversified equity fund, there will never be a need for a strategic exit, because if you have a distributor who says, oh yes, you bought Birla Flexi Cap fund, but it's not doing so well, you should now buy Mahindra Flexi Cap fund. These are sometimes ways for people to make money in terms of commission. So just ignore all of that. As long as you pick 3 or 4 decent fund houses, buy Flexi Cap funds or buy index funds for that matter, there will never be a need for a strategic exit. There will always be a need at times for a tactical exit, which is you invested for a cause, you wanted to do stuff, and sometimes you will make use of your investments to do it, right? Otherwise, what is the point of doing it in the first place?
Next question is, so 20 is early. Is age 30 late to start equity? Alicia.
No, it's not. It's never too late to start. If you haven't done it as yet, it's never too late to start. It's as simple as that, right? Age 30, by the way, I wish I didn't even start at 30. And I'm pretty happy. So, Alicia, don't worry. 30 is still good. There are people, trust me, in my business, I meet people who've never invested in equity in their lives. They just want. Right? And, times are tough. We've all just come out of the pandemic, right? There've been horror stories, but you know what a medical cost today? That you go to hospital, you don't land out of hospital with a bill lesser than 10 lakhs. Now, just think somebody who said, no, equity is bad and just bought a fixed deposit at 5. See, there were days when your parents and my parents got fixed deposit rates of 10, 12%. Those days are long gone because the country has gone to a different phase. We are going to be the 3rd largest economy in the next 7-8 years. Economies as large as that do not pay interest rates of 8 and 9%, right? They pay interest rates of 5-6%. So you just have to do the maths. I mean, what is 5-6% going to do when inflation is 6%? Nothing.
America is 2%, right?
America is 2-3%. Yeah, that's the way. I mean, see, ultimately, there is a corny joke that people say, how do you actually say that a country is developed? You say a country is developed when actually people take the train to work, not the car. Because you basically have such great infrastructure that everybody's comfortable taking the tube to work rather than actually driving, right? I mean, while here it's the reverse. You actually, because you will try to take the car to work because you can't take the train. So it's the same thing. I mean, as a country and an economy matures, interest rates are going to drop. So if you have to create wealth, you don't do it through fixed income. It's just not possible.
Okay, compounding.
Yeah, after accumulating, if we do partial selling, how much it will affect the compounding rate? Alan, you asked 2 questions on compounding. It's not a steady graph, you're right. How much it will affect? It will affect, but it doesn't matter. See, just think of it this way. You have invested something for a dream car you wanted to buy 10 years from now. Now, just imagine, don't think about when the time comes to buy the car that, what will happen to my return, compounded return. Because the joy you will get from driving that car will be far more than the pain you will have of losing some return of compounding. So ultimately, I want to just make it clear, we are talking about investing to get dreams and aspirations sorted. We are not discussing investment so that you are the richest person possible just before you go to your grave. Because then that's the most pointless use, right? I mean, for example, some of the richest people in the world, at some point, they use that wealth to do charity. Right? Because that's that makes them happy. What's the point of just earning this wealth and, doing whatever? So there's a question you're saying ETF is a dynamic way of investing in a particular index, small cap, large cap, index fund, which is better. Like I said, there is a type of fund called Flexi Cap. Right? It's a fund which will decide whether it buys more of large, mid, small. I think that's typically the best type of fund to buy, because let the fund manager decide whether they want to be large, small, or mid. ETF is a dynamic way of investing in a particular index. Yes, it is a dynamic way, but I would say, if you find it more convenient to buy an ETF, buy an ETF. If you find it more convenient, which I suspect is the case for most people, to buy an index fund, just buy an index fund. Because an ETF and an index fund return will not be the will not be different beyond the point. So I think that's
Yeah, there is one more. Alan has another question.
yeah. What is your view on investing in small cases? My view is very clear. Trying to understand which small case is decent, etc., etc. Eventually, this is all clever marketing. They all give you returns which are actually equal to or worse than basic typical mutual funds. So avoid doing all these pyrotechnics of small case, PMS, AIF. These are all wonderful things we create because we need to convince you that there are better ways to make money to give us, to manage. For all of you in your 20s, just buy a standard equity fund. You make 12, 13% return over the next 10 years compounded, you guys will be smiling. If you start changing it to, oh, I'd like to in the next party, I will say, I bought this small case, I bought this alternate investment fund. Trust me, that person in 10 years will be having lots of these things, but will not have got the 12% return because he would have bought one small case that gave 14% and one small case that gave minus 10%. So my suggestion is keep it extremely simple. The simplicity is all of you at your age need to save money, need to invest it regularly, need to give it time, and need to buy basic stuff. Simple. If you do that, you become wealthy. Cheryl, I think we're done. I
Other
think
questions, guys? That's it.
I just wanted to say something.
Yes, Janice.
So, sir, good evening. I would just like to summarize what you've said. Okay. So, of the
Yes.
percentage you don't need of your salary, of that 72% will go. I mean, if your age is 28, I caught the age as 25. So, yeah, okay, 75% will go into equity and, good or an index fund and things like that. And the remaining you can enjoy with your money in your life.
No. You got it right so far. No. You have said let's say if your salary is 20,000, if
Okay.
you figured that out of 20,000, you can spare 3,000. Okay. Then
Okay.
75% of 3,000 is what you will put in equity. Remaining
Acha.
25% of 3,000 you will put in a fixed deposit. Remaining 17,000 you will use for your thing. Don't take the
Oh
remaining
my.
1,000 also and
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Janice, you scared yourself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually got a little like, oh no, did I hear it wrong?
Any other questions, guys? Or is there anybody who doesn't know what Take Charge is about? Who's not a Take Charge mentee? Hi, guys. Is there anybody who's not a Take Charge mentee here?
Hi, yeah, that would be me. My mom was one of the mentors at St. Andrews, so she told me about this.
Okay. So would you like to know a little bit more about Take Charge for all those who don't know? Let's say thank you to saying first, I think, Anthony, Sharon.
Yes,
Oh,
thank
David
you
has
very much.
David has a question. 1 minute. David.
Okay.
Oh no, it wasn't a question. It was just
Okay. Sorry.
clapping.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
So thank you very much, Anthony, for a very interesting session. And you there were so many things. Even though I'm like senior, I should say, I also learned many things today. And some of the points which you taught us were very simple, like things like about equity. In just one sentence you explained it. Then inflation. I mean it was very interesting, and I wish I had met you 25 years earlier. Maybe I would have invested much more and had more investments and systematic investments, as you say.
Yeah.
But I think this is a really good thing you have told us, and like I'm sure from today everyone will think about it when they go back seriously and start deciding how much they can invest, and especially about the equity part. which they can do right now, all of the youngsters here. So
Correct.
I think that would be really very good for everybody. And we thank you so much for introducing all these things to us, all these concepts.
Absolutely
And
welcome.
yeah, and
Anthony,
it's
there's
very
one more
interesting.
question. There's
And
one.
a
Yeah,
lot of
okay.
games. I know you had that small quiz which made us think. The game and
Yeah.
even the story you told about the hostel
Yeah.
and all was very nice. So thanks a lot. And thank you
Welcome.
everyone, also the participants, all of you for interacting so well, asking questions, and getting a better perspective on things. So thank you so much for attending and being here today, all of you.
I think Romain has a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
Roman has it.
Yes, yes. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for taking your time to give us this lovely workshop. Okay, my question is really simple. Okay, so this whole afternoon, there's one really good piece of news I can hear throughout this whole call, which is basically that no matter what, where you invest, what you do, as long as you stay consistent for the long term and don't withdraw your investment or whatever, you'll be good, right? There's no need
Yep.
to really crack our brains on thinking about what is better and what is worse and studying the markets. So to me that looks like really good news because I can now chill and not really tax my brain about calculations like this. But are there any things that I should still keep my eyes open about or like watch out for while um investing, or like is it like you can just take this advice and be happy and not look
Be-
at this topic
No,
again?
you can take this advice because trust me, it sounds very simple, but 90% of people don't do it. It is very difficult to do. It sounds very simple. It is very difficult to do. Because just think about, there will be so many events. COVID happened. People thought the world is coming to an end. Everybody will run. Let's assume you've invested for 10 years, right? You had invested totally 3 lakh rupees. It's now worth 30 lakhs. Now you think, oh my God, COVID, that 30 lakhs has become already 23 lakhs. What do? I need to get out. And you forget these lessons saying this stuff happens, right? And the people who took it out, and then markets bounce back and the 30 lakhs has become 35, but you're 23 now. You're sitting on the sidelines saying, oh no, I'm sure it will now correct, I'll wait. Those are mental, emotional things that keep happening. So that is why I'm clarifying. It may sound, what I've said is very simple. It's extremely difficult to do, right? Some of the funds that I used to manage, let's say theoretically, in the 90s, I can tell you that, let's say the return that they've delivered 25 years later is 25% or 20% CAGR. It's a lot of money. You know what? When we actually analyze the number of investors who invested with us in the late 90s, only 2-3% are still invested today. The remaining 97% have gone along the way. Right? So we put out great marketing stories saying that, had you invested 100 rupees, it is worth 50,000 today. But out of every 100 investors who invested the 100 rupees, the sad reality is 97 did not get to that 50,000. 97 parted ways a long time ago. So what you're asking me, I'm saying, clarifying to you and to everybody, it's actually not easy to keep it this simple. It's not easy because you think, it surely must be so complicated. I must use my intellect. But actually, it's about using your emotional maturity. If you use that better, you're sorted. It's not easy to do, right? Not in investing. It's not easy to do it in anything in life.
So basically, this sounds too good to be true. So,
Yeah,
and it
it
is
does.
as true as it is. We can
It
take
is
your word
because
for that.
you can
Wow.
take my word for it. You can statistically look at it. In fact, like I said, I just saw it on my LinkedIn feed today. There's a Stern grad who's done an analysis on the Indian equity markets over the last 40 years. He said, any 10-year period in the last 40 years that you can pick, which means any 10 years, right? I mean, I can pick 1st May 2003 to 1st May 2013. And there are so many such 10-year periods. It's impossible to have lost money. 40 years. Can you imagine what's happened to India and the world in the last 40 years? So that's the truth. But is it possible that I think 20,000 times? I'll tell you myself, irrespective of what I've just told you, I have committed errors in the last year alone. Forget the last 5 years. And I will keep making, because that's human tendency. And in fact, for me, it's actually worse because I think I know more. No? So I actually end up doing stupider stuff. Like I think Russia-Ukraine war, something is going to happen. So I will not invest that next sum of money because I have a view. And then I realized that, you're taught that was stop wasting time thinking about these things. Everything happens and they sort themselves out. So I come back to that. I'm clarifying it's not going to be simple.
So do you
Okay,
think,
thank you.
Anthony, that if we invest, we should just not like look at that? Sometimes you tend to look at every day, like, oh, what is whether it's going up, going down. We should let it remain for a
I'm
longer time.
clarifying if you invest in a typical flexi cap fund or you invest in an index fund, then you don't need to worry. But if Alan goes and invests in a small case, then Alan will be jumping up and down every 2 months because he will not be sure. And I'm saying at this stage of your life, what you have, which we don't have, what Sharon, Cheryl, and I don't have, is age. So you have the biggest advantage already. So why overcomplicate it by doing other stuff? Now that we didn't do what we should have done when we were your age, we have to do all these pyrotechnics. Right? You remember the example I gave you of Jessica and Anthony? So Anthony has to get 36%, so he'll buy small case. Yeah, so that's what Alan is saying. Small cases are highly volatile and very high returns. Alan, my experience, those returns happen to other people. The volatility happens to me. That's always the case.
For long term, long term.
For long term, just buy an index fund. You will take the average return of most small cases and they will be the same. So it doesn't matter. Trust me, I know some of the guys who run these. We all see, eventually we take money and we buy equity. We buy stocks. So we all do the same thing. I package it as small case, highly focused, etc. But I'll throw you an example. We run one of the best performing focused funds in the country. Right? It's outperformed 90% of small cases. So it doesn't matter. Now, I'm not recommending that you guys go and buy a focus fund because I think that's a little later in your journey. Just buy an index fund, buy a diversified flexi cap fund. It will at best deliver 1% lower return over 10 years than a focused fund. Why does it matter? It doesn't matter. Are you really going to care whether you made 13% compounded CAGR or 13.7 compounded CAGR? No. How many SIPs do you recommend investing at a time? So guys, I think don't have more than 3 or 4 investments in equity funds. That's broadly it. Right? As an industry, we have created 1,000 funds, but effectively all pretty much do the same thing. So don't overcomplicate your life because there'll be too much of stuff to manage. Just start an SIP in 3 or 4 funds, good enough. Not for today, it's good enough for life.
Hello. I had a question. So,
Yeah,
as you said that investing is more about EQ than IQ. So, my question is like, should we consider instead of focusing more about the money aspect, should we focus about developing values in life and habits that help us stay disciplined and then like while investing?
Yeah, I think Alano is making a point. I will come back to that Alano's point. See, I'll tell you one of the things you guys should definitely do is start reading some books. There are some excellent books. I think Fleur mentioned or somebody else mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Roman, was it you? No, I don't remember. Somebody said Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a great book to read. There's a book by Morgan Housel called The Psychology of Money. It's a definite must read. It is so beautifully written about the things you should do when investing and not. So those are the things you should definitely read because that amount of investment you need to do, because that's how you will build the values, right? When you have learned people giving you much more insights. This is just an hour and a half and I'm not learned anyway. So the point is reading up on that stuff is important. Alano is making the point, some level of research. Yes, because you are investing your hard-earned money in equity, it doesn't hurt to at least be somewhat informed. But I will say the moment you start making that then form part of the decisions you do, then you need to be really confident that you're going to be able to give enough time and energy to that matter, right? Because if you start reading the newspapers, you start analyzing, infrastructure spends are going up in the country, and then you say, now I will buy an infrastructure stock. That's where the danger starts to set in my view. But somebody also raised a question about, when should I, when will I know I should exit a fund? Now, unless you have some broad understanding, you probably will never know, right? Some of you may use a distributor to invest. In that case, if the distributor is telling you this fund is not doing well, you should go to that fund. Somewhere you have to equip yourself with the ability to do your own judgment little bit. So don't go into this blind saying, oh, I've just invested in equity. I don't know anything else beyond the point. All I know is Anthony told me, don't ever take your money out till you need to go to New Zealand or buy the Harley. Yes, I agree. But somewhere there are other parts, Darren, that you've raised. Great question, actually. That, take some of these books, The Psychology of Money, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, read them. It'll give you guys a great perspective on how, investing and money is made. And they're not very complicated. That's the best. That's the best part. Any advice for 60-year-old participants?
So we have a few on YouTube
On
also.
YouTube.
Yeah. So who have joined? So, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say firstly, using the same rule of thumb I said at notional age to be 100. I would say for anybody who's past 60, I would believe not more than 30-40% of your investment should be going into equity. I would also make the point, and this is a bit of a technical point. I believe our country is going through a transformation that is very significant. Okay. So I'll give you a perspective. In 2006 or 7, we were the 15th largest economy in the world. As of today, we're the 7th largest economy. We're the fastest growing large economy in the world. Given multiple things, I won't go into them. It's very likely, and this is not my prognosis, it's a very high consensus view that by 2030, India is going to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. As I had made a point earlier when Cheryl and I were talking about it, it's a very natural consequence of when an economy becomes more mature and developed, interest rates fall. Okay, it's a very natural part of it. So especially for the 60-plus-year-olds, I will make 2 points therefore. Expect rates to fall over the next 5-10 years. And B, as we speak currently, I believe we are at the peak of interest rates, right? Because obviously interest rates have gone up over the last year and a half. Those of us who have EMIs to pay would definitely know that. But I personally, and this is a house view we have at my own company, that we think interest rates have peaked. They're not going to rise any further, which means anybody who's looking to buy a deposit, if you have to lock into a long-term deposit, this is the time to do it. Because I would believe that 6 months or a year from now, the rate you will get from the bank on a bank deposit will be lower than what it is today. So I would summarize to a 60-year-old plus saying that obviously then more than 50% of your investment should be in fixed income, right? So buying a bank deposit, buying a high quality company fixed deposit should be 50-60% of your portfolio. And the remaining 40% should buy a diversified equity fund and you should be good to go. The other thing I would recommend, if it is possible, invest the money also in trying to buy a great health insurance cover. Really, really important, because I would say good old days where, 5 lakh, 10 lakh cover, just absolutely not good enough. So even if it costs money, trust me, try getting a health insurance when you're in the 70s. It's not going to be possible, right? I mean, you land once in the hospital, your premiums change substantially. So in fact, I would say beyond all the other stuff I told you, the first thing you should do if you don't have adequate health insurance, which I find 90% of people don't, right? Everybody says, yes, I have health insurance, but I have 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. That's one visit to the hospital. So I think people need to look at 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs, because that is definitely needed in terms of the way medical costs are going up. So I would therefore say 3 things. Buy good long-term bank deposits, because this is the time to do it. Don't do more than 30-40% equity, and beef up your medical insurance. Really important.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah.
I had one more question. So, like now every person is like different, and now if we compare investing to EQ, so our goals will be different. So, how important is it to set goals to your investments, and is setting goal to your investments easier to maintain them?
I would answer it in two ways. I think at this current juncture, just the fact that you should be figuring out what you can save out of your income and then just making sure you start an SIP in a diversified fund or an index fund is the thing you should do first, just without thinking about getting into goals, etc. The second part is not linking investment to goals. I think you need to just put down the goals. I mean, what goals do you have for yourself? What dreams do you have for yourself? What ways would you like to put that down? Put time frames around it, right? Because not every goal is something you're going to do over the next 1 year. And then try to kind of correlate it with what investments it's going to take. But I would just hesitate in doing too much of that right now, because in your early 20s, beyond a point, starting to think about what you'll do when you're 40 is a little too much. Right. So I would say just make sure you get the savings and the investment bit started. Start thinking about the goals while you're doing it. And over time, start having a much better kind of thought process or time spent on what do I want in terms of goals, dreams, where are my investments, how are they aligned? That's something that you can go to an advisor also and kind of take active help, or you do it yourself. It depends on what your level of understanding of this space is. Should we start investing for retirement in 20s? No, you should start investing for making sure your 30s and your 40s and your 50s are nice. When you get to your 30s and your 40s, you start thinking a little more about retirement. I think it will be a little crazy for me to suggest that, at least it'll be hypocritical, right? When I was 20, frankly, even right now, I don't spend too much time thinking about, how 10, 15 years down the line, what's going to happen. So I would say you invest because a lot of large ticket monies you're going to need are not going to happen only when you retire, right? They're going to happen when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, stuff like that. So maybe, yes, you can think about retirement per se, but remember one very beautiful thing. The best long-term way of investing for retirement is equity. Okay, so you look at pension funds that people tell you should buy. Pension funds typically all do equity only, right? So as long as you guys are doing SIP equities, you're anyways doing automatically. You're doing your retirement planning and you're doing your other planning. Yeah. Alano, Alano, should you buy medical insurance in your 20s? Absolutely. I mean, I answered that question specifically to the 60s, but trust me, you guys are in a sweet spot, right? Because the kind of insurance premium you will pay in your 20s is next to nothing. So you should definitely consider it. But I would say maybe when you start hitting your late 20s, I think it will be a little too much, because it's expensive. It's not, so we're discussing on one level, somebody should try to invest 2,000 a month. It's not going to be that easy for everybody on this call. Okay. And then medical insurance, if you're going to do it, do one which is like at least a 15, 20 lakh cover. That will also probably cost 15 grand a year, 20 grand a year at your age. So then the question is, should I do medical insurance or should I do the SIP? I would definitely say, boss, do the SIP for now, deal with the medical insurance when you're late 20s, early 30s. But definitely do it.
What is the benefit of getting a medical insurance early?
The premiums. The premiums are very different.
No, to explain.
Very, very different.
To explain.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give you an example. If I had to do a medical insurance for, let's say, 25 lakhs, I don't know, but I'm assuming the premium every year will be like 2-3 lakhs. If a 30-year-old wanted to do the same thing, the premium will probably be 1/10. Like 10% of that. That's the thing. Now, obviously, you're paying for those 20 years when you really are never using it. But when you start doing the maths on an Excel sheet, it will still make sense. And you know what also happens, this is very, very common for people. A lot of us, unfortunately, are not businessmen, right? So a lot of us are salaried employees. And so your company has company mediclaim. So you are like always chilled out saying, no, my company has mediclaim. So you never really get around to doing your own mediclaim. That is a big mistake people make, right? Because when you then turn around in your 50s and want to get your own personal mediclaim, you realize the cost is through the roof. And so therefore, and it's a very common thing. It's happened to me as well, right? My wife always tells me, for example, that we should beef up our own personal medical because I have the luxury of having a very high company medical. But eventually I will leave the company. I've left 5 jobs in the last 20 years, right? So what's the point of saying that I have a great medical insurance because I left the company? So then it's not valid. So I would definitely tell the guys on the call, yes, medical insurance, but towards your, I don't want you guys to leave this call with, you know, you guys are all early 20s. I don't want this to be, you know, save all you can, invest all you can, buy medical insurance, do this, do that. At some point, you also have to enjoy life, right? So my point is start doing it gradually, really. That's all that we can do at this juncture. Yeah. In our 50s, we would automatically fall into our children's company's medical insurance. No, you know, honestly, it's I'm just arguing quantums, right? All company medical insurances typically for employees range between, at best, the most generous companies do 10 lakhs, right? Otherwise, it's 5 to 7 lakhs. And I genuinely believe in today's day and age, 5 to 10 lakhs, if that's all the medical cover you're going to carry for the rest of your life, I would seriously question it. Right? I mean, I say this as an analyst because we analyze hospital stocks, right? A lot of hospital listed stocks, they are there to make profits because they eventually are listed on the market. They're not there only for charity, right? So they directionally tell us that, for example, they expect their revenues to grow by 10-15% over the next 10 years. So effectively what he's telling me is the cost of medical an operation is going to grow up 10-15%. Imagine the example I showed all of you with inflation at 6%. Just imagine, just imagine an operation that costs 10 lakhs today at 10% inflation. What is it going to cost 30 years from now? So what is the point of taking a 10 lakh insurance? It's not going to be of any value. So and a lot of companies are now realizing the cost of insurance for elderly people. I can say this personally, even from the company that I am part of. It's not easy to cover parents as it used to be. And frankly, as soon as your parents go into the 70s and 80s, it's a nightmare. It's like absolutely no chance, right? So I would definitely recommend to all the young people on this call today, definitely at some point in your late 20s, early 30s, start thinking about meaningful number of medical insurance. Don't just take 5-10 lakhs for the sake of it. Then don't do it at all. And for the older folks, all I'm saying is it's different for different people. Somebody would have a decent cover with their child's employment, maybe. I'm just saying everybody needs to relook at their medical insurance cover and be truthful and answer whether it's enough. I would guess 90% will come to the conclusion that it's not. I think we're done, Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you. You've been there
So,
quite.
Before we end, Cheryl, we would like to just take 2 to 3 minutes more of everyone's time. We just have a few short videos just to show what TechCharge is about. And then we'll just get on a photo. We'll just take a quick screenshot of everyone. Till then, you all can groom yourself if you want. If I'm not wrong, someone had asked, can I get in touch with Anthony, right? I'm not sure who it was. Anthony, can we share your LinkedIn bio or something? LinkedIn details?
Yeah, you can. That's cool. Somebody
Okay,
also asked WhatsApp. I would say yes and no, because honestly, I'm not sure I'll be able to respond to investment queries on WhatsApp beyond the point. Not because I want to be arrogant or all. I have a lot of regulatory guidelines about how I can interact with individual people. So, but LinkedIn, absolutely no problem.
Cool. I'll just share a video.
What would it be? I'm hoping it's football.
Acting, writing, literature, stuff like that.
Someone successful in life.
I'm really confused. I have no idea.
An English teacher.
Probably a web developer or database manager. Basically, things it change every week.
Actually, I have completely no idea.
Right now, I'm going to follow what all my friends are doing.
Probably studying.
I haven't yet made the decision. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, that would be very good.
I think it's not a bad idea.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, that would be brilliant.
Shall, would you like to say something, or should I play Lewis's video?
Play Lewis's video.
Hi, I'm Louis Miranda. What we're trying to achieve at Take Charge is to get our youth to aspire to do more than they currently aspire to do. So what do? We basically pair them up with a mentor for a period of 18 to 21 months. And in that period, there are 4 things that we really work on. One is, how do you build up a relationship with an adult who you have no need to be connected to? You're not a family member, nor is she an employer, but that's one part of it, where you're building up a relationship of trust with an adult. 2, focusing on the importance of excellence in whatever you do, be it in sport or studies or anything else. Whatever you're trying to do, excel in it. The third is focusing on some of the softer skills like communication, confidence. These actually are life skills, and which you don't necessarily learn in the classroom. How can we help you with that? And the fourth is career guidance. So we put all this package together, and we hope to help our youth become more successful and more confident and more aware of what they can achieve in life. What we're doing over here is fun and exciting, and we'd love you to be part of this movement. So sign up, please.
Guys, everybody on cam, please. Let's get a nice photograph. Darren. Alan, Ria, Joshua, Cindy. Thank you, all of you. Come on cam. The rest of you, if you can come on, that would be nice. So we'd have a nice photograph. Thank you, Janice. How are you?
I'm fine, Cheryl. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Edna. Okay, thank you, Edna. let's get that photograph.
Yes, everybody say cheese. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Cheryl. Take care. Everybody have a lovely Sunday. And
yes.
I'm assuming everybody's
another holiday tomorrow.
Yeah. So
bye.
Good. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Anthony.